I think everyone would say I'm probably a little bit nicer, maybe.
Awesome.
So tell us, because what I'm really interested in about is you went on this journey. I would love to know kind of your revelations. I would also really like to know too, the original reason I signed up for that webinar with Shayla was, how do you write a good thank you card? What goes through your head? Because for me, and I know lots of people on here, you write the same thing every time. Thanks for working with us. We're so honored you considered us. We take great, it's the same gibberish every time. But how do you really write a true, authentic thank you card, and what kind of mindset you have to be in, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's great. Cool. So we'll do that. And actually what I'd love to do is, I'm gonna do a little bit of a spoiler. I'm gonna invite everyone before the call's over to write a thank you card to somebody. So we're not gonna do that just yet, but I'm gonna wait a little bit towards the end, and I'll share a really simple 3-part framework. We call it the ABCs of writing a great thank you card. It's really simple, and when you get it, you'll get it, right? And so we'll go through a few examples because you'll start to see them illustrated as we go through. So yeah, the journey, one thing to kind of set the stage a little bit, there were some rules with the project. And by the way, the intention of me being here is not even that you do what I did, or even necessarily do what Lisa did. The whole point is that you leave with some ideas and insights that are going to help you with your business in your life to experience and express more gratitude, because ultimately, I think we could all agree that the world could need a little bit more of it right now. And gratitude is a really fascinating thing, right? It's really powerful in moments when things are challenging. Right? When it seems like everything's going wrong. One of the greatest things that pulls us out of it is the ability to look at what's right, the ability to find the gift in the experience. That's really actually the true definition of gratitude. Gratitude is the emotion one feels when you receive a gift or experience something as a gift. Okay, that is a direct quote from Dr. Robert Emmons. He's the foremost researcher on gratitude as it relates to well-being. And so I'll say that again, the best definition of gratitude is the emotion one feels when you receive a gift or experience something as a gift. So the interesting distinction there is, number one, it is that emotion we're all familiar with, right? Someone gives you a gift unexpectedly, you feel great. You're like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. You didn't need to do that, right? That's kind of the nature of the experience of a gift, is you didn't need to do that. And it's noticing that, it's acknowledging that. And then there's this other piece here where it is the experience of something as a gift. So in moments of challenging times, when business is suffering, you're struggling, maybe business is going great, but things at home aren't going great. Any number of things can be going on. But it's the ability to look at whatever is occurring and to ask the question, where's the gift? And the thing that's interesting about that is, for most of us, it's easy to be grateful when things are going well. But how often is that also not the case? Because it could be better. Well, things are going great. I should be working harder. I should be working more. The market's fantastic right now, right? And then we ultimately have this fantastic situation that we make terrible because we just tell ourselves that it's not enough. Mm-hmm. So gratitude is really, that's the thing, is it's noticing something as a gift or experiencing something as a gift. And the other part of that, what I found was really interesting throughout this year, because a lot of this this year was writing thank you cards, because you got to understand, like, 5 cards every day times 365 days is 1,825 letters of appreciation. That's a lot of people. There was also some rules in place for this project that are probably important to note. So the commitment was the cards had to be 5 cards every day, handwritten. So it couldn't be a text or an email or a video. Not that I don't think those are great. I think video is awesome. I use BombBomb all the time and other video platforms. But I wanted it to be handwritten because it takes time, and it's like this cathartic process to think through as you're doing it. The second rule was that every single day reset at 0. Okay, so this means that I had to write 5 every single day, so it couldn't be 35 thank you cards on Sunday. The third rule was I could write a max of 3 cards per any one person. Okay, so this is also because I know myself, and if I was running out of time and couldn't think of anybody, I'd probably write the 75th thank you card to my mother. Maybe she would have appreciated that. I don't know if there's any moms on here who would appreciate 75 thank you cards from your children. But I also thought if I did that, they would start to lose their luster and their value. Mm-hmm. So I made it a commitment. It could be a max of 3 per person. The last rule was kind of an interesting one, which was around accountability. So my coach says, hey, John, this sounds like a cool project, but what's the accountability? So what happens if or when you miss a day? And I thought about it, and I said, all right, for every day that I miss, I'm going to donate $100 to charity. I felt pretty good about that. I was like, yeah, it's like an honorable like commitment, right? So he looks at me and says, add a 0. And I said, hang on a second. You want me to donate $1,000 to charity for any and every day that I don't write 5 thank you cards? That's crazy. And he said, well, I don't want you to have to donate any money, but let me ask you this. How many days are you going to miss if $1,000 is at stake? I said, none. He's like, okay, well, and on the other side of that, how many times this year are you probably going to donate $100 to a charity? I'm like, well, we kind of do that all the time. He's like, okay, well, then you're giving yourself a way out. So what would you like to do? Great coach, by the way, right? So the fourth and final rule was $1,000 to charity for any and every day that I missed writing my 5 thank you cards. This is what was at stake every single day for 365 days. So there was no way that I could possibly miss. And I say this because that challenge forced me to find people and things to be grateful for, especially days that I didn't want to. Mm-hmm. Like days that I had the flu. My wife gave birth one of these days. I was in the hospital writing thank you cards to the nurses, to the doctors. Like, and here's why I think this is a powerful thing to keep in mind is that there is this concept inside of being a human called a negative bias. This is a psychological term. A negative bias is it's baked into our DNA from when we were cavemen and cavewomen. And a negative bias is where we're prone to notice what's wrong before we look for what's right. And so this helped us survive, right? Back when we were cavemen and cavewomen, if we were out in the bushes and we heard a growl behind a rock, we wouldn't assume it's a cute little kitty cat. We would think saber-toothed tiger, we would run away, and then we would live to see another day, right? So it actually helped us survive for years, for generations. But how is that affecting our lives now? Constantly noticing and constantly looking for what's wrong. And by the way, companies, media, they know this. That's why if you look at the nature of most media, it hits the pain button. It hits the fear buttons because they know you're going to pay attention. But we're getting 1,000 messages a day of this type of communication. So how is that training our thinking? And so what was interesting is when you do this whole like 5 cards every day, it became this thing like, I have to look for somebody doing something right. And there's a difference of just like looking and noticing. Because if I just said, hey, like notice something that's great in your life, you could be like, huh, that's kind of great. But then if I were to say inside of that, find a way to acknowledge it publicly, or find a way to acknowledge that person publicly and to stop everything and then to write out a level of acknowledgement, you have to pause what you're doing. So there's a lot of things that are actually at place. So if you ever hear people talk about the benefits of meditation and mindfulness, mindfulness is really, it's being present in the moment. So it's really beautiful about gratitude and why I think it's very distinct from happiness, because happiness is like, hey, just do something that makes you happy, which is great, right? Gratitude is a reflective state because you literally have to stop what you're doing, think about something, and add positive meaning. That process by itself is very therapeutic. That process is a mindfulness practice because it's causing you to interrupt your day and to get really present in the moment and to think, not just, I don't want to say like think happy thoughts like Peter Pan, but like literally just think of something like, where is the gift in this thing? Where's the gift in this experience? Or what is beautiful about this human being? And when we start to go through that process every day, then how do you think that's going to interact the next thing you do for the day? How is that going to impact how you interact with your spouse, your significant other, your children? It changes everything. And so when you look at it from like the biological, psychological standpoint, it's a really powerful tool when it's done with that intentionality. And we didn't get to like writing the thank you cards, but I think, Lisa, this is what you're talking about, is it's the process of having to think through what you appreciate about somebody that really just kind of starts to change like your thought patterns. And ultimately that, we all understand like our thoughts create our life. What we think about on a regular basis, like there's a behavior trend with that. So that's some of the things that initially really came out of this project that were really powerful.
Yeah, and I think I can definitely attest to just that meditation process because it does truly start to change the way that you think. And I think this year more than ever, we are inundated with negativity and I shouldn't even say negativity, but just what's bad in the world. And I just really feel like this has helped me see the silver lining of everything. Like sometimes my phone rings at 8:30 a.m. on Saturday morning and it's someone that wants to get pre-approved. And sometimes I'm like, ah. And I feel like now my mentality is like, I get to help that person, even though it's maybe not the ideal time, but they need me. And it feels pretty dang good to be needed. And you start to think like that. And I think much like you're talking about, the gratitude and what you're doing is like a muscle. So the more that you work on it, the more tuned in you get with it, the more that will be kind of the norm for you. Am I right?
Yeah, and if it's helpful, there's like somewhat of a formulaic process that goes into appreciation. Do you mind if I share that?
Go ahead.
Awesome. So, because I think that like conceptually this sounds great, right? So we do, want to get to like, well, how do you do it, right? Like, okay, so I'll just sit down with a thank you card. Wait, what did he say again? How do I do this? Thanks for making me coffee today, right? How do we like really make this a transformational experience? So, and I'll share this with a story because there's a lot of really unique things that happened during this year of just interacting with different people that I would meet. So day 3 of the project, I am living in Southern California still. We were actually closing escrow on our house in Texas. And so I was boarding a flight from Los Angeles to Philadelphia for this business event. And as I boarded the plane, I was thinking about, okay, well, who am I going to write my cards to today, right? Because that's the thing to think about. Every single day, it kind of starts over because, again, I can only write 3 per person throughout the year. So there are not really very many repeats here. So you become this person looking for people doing something right. And it's this interesting activity. And so I was boarding this plane, and the first people I think about are the pilots on the plane, because I fly a lot. And every time during takeoff, I say a prayer for safe travel. And you know what? They have delivered 100% of the time. And I've never formally even said thank you to them. I mean, like they've literally had my life and thousands of lives in their hands every single day. And so I thought, geez, yeah, like I'm for sure going to write them a thank you card. So I board the plane and I asked the flight attendant for the names of the pilots. I very quickly learned that is a strange question. She doesn't get asked this very often, so she gets a little weirded out. I have to explain, I'm going to write them a thank you card. And then she softens up and it's like, oh, that's so sweet. Here you go. It's an interesting experience. So I sit down, but then I have a problem. And the problem is I don't know these people. We've never actually met. How do you thank somebody that you don't even know that you've never met before? And there is this interesting thing during the project. I love learning where language comes from, right? And the word appreciate comes from the Latin word appreciare, which literally means to appraise or to set the value of a thing, right? So appreciate, root word is appreciare, literally translates to appraise or to set the value of a thing. Well, there are a lot of real estate professionals in here, and you know the importance of what an appraisal is, right? And interesting thing is, like, if you ever thought, what is an appraisal? What is it? It is where an individual walks into a property or looks at a piece of jewelry or something, and they ask a bunch of questions. And they say, well, what condition is this item in? Is there any pest or termite damage? What are other things like this going for right now? And they have this huge list of questions that they ask, and they ultimately hand you a sheet of paper that says, I deem this item or property to be worth X dollars. So then how do you apply that to a human being? And what I learned on that plane flight is that you just become really curious about this other person's life. Like, what is their life like? Mm-hmm. What is it that they care about? What matters to them? Another great question is, like, what are their struggles? What are their fears? What are their biggest challenges that go into what they do every single day? And it was interesting asking these questions because I started to get really connected with, like, even these guys I'd never met. I just started to have this real, like, empathy of, like, oh man, like that's what it's like to be a pilot, isn't it? And as I thought these things, I mean, this is basically the card that came out. And I said, dear pilot, I know it might seem strange to receive a thank you card from a passenger, but as I boarded this plane, I realized how much I missed my family. And then I realized this is what you do every day for your job. I can't imagine how many birthdays, anniversaries, or special events you sacrifice because of your work. Not to mention the hundreds, if not thousands of hours you've spent in the cockpit training for your job, because nobody becomes a pilot by accident. All of that to have some bad weather, a slightly bumpy landing, and then have people complain about it. So whether you hear it enough or not, I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and everybody on this flight. I fold up the card and I write two cards very similar, right? Two pilots on the same flight. And we land in the next destination. Pilots are typically still in the cockpit. And so I get to hand them their thank you cards as I'm exiting the plane. And then I get on another flight to do the same thing because there's two legs of my flight to get to my final destination. So I get to do this 4 times, 4 different pilots. So this is what was interesting, Lisa, and everyone who's paying attention here, which is what I did that moment that I didn't, well, you've read the book, so you know what's going to happen, right? What I didn't do intentionally was I only had my business stationery with me, which had my name and cell phone number and email printed on the card. Mm-hmm. This is what was crazy. Within 24 hours of landing in Philadelphia, 3 out of those 4 pilots personally contacted me to say thank you for the card that they received. One went on to say, you know, John, in my 12 years of flying, I have never received a thank you card from a passenger. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's crazy. How is that even possible? These guys with such a big, significant, important job, and no one's even taking the time just to say thank you to them? Mm-hmm. And I thought, geez, I mean, if that's the case with these guys with such a big, important job, what about everybody else in their jobs, in their lives, in their marriages? I just thought, like, there's this huge appreciation deficit in the world. Mm-hmm. And when I got off the plane, I really started to, I always try to look for, like, you know, what if that is duplicatable? What if that is something that I could, like, replicate on a regular basis? And I definitely can't say that what happened on that plane flight is what happened every day for 365 days. But it really did teach me an interesting lesson. And actually, I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna share I have when I do keynote speaking, I have slides. So I'm gonna share a slide because it's got a quote that will really, like, summarize this for you. So it'll be helpful for you to take home with you. And it's really kind of how do we do this in real time and form. So this is how we make connections with people. How do we express gratitude? So it really appreciation begins with curiosity. So curiosity is the precursor to appreciation. And appreciation is the birthplace of empathy. And with empathy, we develop compassion. And when we have compassion, we have the ability to literally connect with anyone. And what I learned on that plane flight is that this wasn't just a distinct thing for pilots. This works for everyone. And if I were to ask you, everyone on this call, like, in general, would you say you're an appreciative person? I think most of us would be like, yeah, like, I think I'm an appreciative person. Like, I appreciate other people mm-hmm. who believe what I believe, who voted for the same person that I voted for, who root for the same teams that I root for. Like, I appreciate those people immensely. Mm-hmm. Well, the challenge is there's a lot more people on planet Earth than that. And I think we can all agree that this is a really unique stage of life where there's a lot of division. And what I find that's fascinating, even still from this quote, as you relate it to this moment and this time of what decisions people are making, and instead of, if we could be curious first, critical second, it's amazing what we would learn. And if we can become curious of, like, oh, that's interesting, I wonder why you said that. I wonder about what about your life and experiences has you thinking that that's the right way to behave right now. And if we actually ask that question, not with spite, but with real curiosity, and we get understanding, and we start to see, because have you ever done this before, where you're upset at somebody, but then they tell you what happened, and then you immediately stop being upset? You're like, oh my gosh, I'm a complete jerk. I can't believe I thought all those things. Because there's this aspect when we're actually curious first, and we discover what went into someone making the decisions they made. We start to have this appreciation of, like, gosh, that makes a lot of sense. And when we have that appreciation for other people, there's this experience of empathy, which is kind of like, yeah, if I was in your shoes and I lived the life you lived and everything of my life was the same as yours, I probably would have made the same decision. And when we have that empathy, we start to feel this compassion, like you could almost call it love, like actually caring deeply about other people. You're connected instantly with anybody. And that's what I loved about this project, was it was this real exploration of yes, gratitude, but through this form of like outward expression. And inside of that, there was a whole world of lessons. That's why, like, at the end of this year, like, I had to write a book about all the different things, because there was just so much that went into it that I really strongly believe that if people could get this message, there would be a lot less pain in the world. There would be a lot less anger, a lot less frustration, a lot more unity. And that was one of the big things that came through. So if you're looking for, like, how do we do this? It's really simple. Start with curiosity, take your time from there.
I think we'd have a lot less angry Facebook posters too. I do. I think that when you, I recently had a post where I put something about my son not being able to play basketball, and the attack, I shouldn't say attack, the like all of a sudden it went from, God, I just feel bad that he can't play because he loves it, to I hate all healthcare workers. I'm like disobedient to whatever. I'm like, I didn't say so was, I just, whatever. And so many people are like, you should, unfriend them or whatever. And I was like, like that's totally their opinion. It's a public forum. Like, I'm actually, for this very thing, curious about what other people think and why they think that. But I think so many people don't have that curiosity. They just have their way. And
Yeah.
I'm so 100% agree with you. If we had just more curiosity versus more opinions, our world would go a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah. There's a lot that we don't know. Like we assume to know so much about people. And so the quote that has been at the bottom of my email for about 12 years now is from Stephen Covey, and it says, people do not see the world as it is, but rather as they are.
Mm.
And that I keep that there. That's been my email closing, because it is just so true. Because, and this is for most of us who are in jobs where we deal with people, right? Like, you get the range of the spectrum of like people who are like, oh, I love you. Like, can we be related? I'd love to see you at the holidays, right?
Yep.
To some people who are like, please leave my office right now, right? And you get the range. And part of, being successful in business is being able to navigate all types of personalities. Now, that doesn't mean you need to do business with every single person you work with, but also you don't need to let it affect you.
Yeah.
And I think that's really also where curiosity becomes really helpful, because when we shift to that negative mentality, that experience, it changes us internally, right? And then it's like our kid asks us for something, and then we snap at him. We're like, hey, whoa, like they're like, man, I just needed to ask for something.
Yeah.
So it affects us. And part of this is really what it comes to. Like, there's a whole chapter in the book where I wrote emotional intelligence and gratitude, because a lot of this, what I learned is actually becoming like emotional intelligence strategies of being able to like be conscious of how I'm feeling in the moment and shift it at any given moment to be, how do I need to be the most effective and present with who's in front of me right now? I think that's a really important skill. So, but yeah, we've covered a lot, Lisa. I know you've read the book, and what else do you think that would be valuable for these guys to know or hear, or what would you like to discuss next?
And feel free, guys, if there are specific questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll watch that a little bit to see if there are any specific questions that you guys do have or you want John to cover. But I think, John, I would love kind of the components of what goes into the thank you card, because I feel like there's a 4-part step or process. I think that was super helpful for me. And then I'll watch to see what other questions they have, but I would love for you to share that, because I think we're talking very emotional, touchy feely, and I'm all good with it as long as we got a couple of tactics to like, how do we like put it into play?
For sure.
That's what I really like, because like I said, originally I signed up so I could write a better thank you card so they didn't all sound the same. And I think there's an actual formula that you've developed, and I think that would be awesome to share.
Yeah, so there's a couple things with it. So first of all, I do want to give a distinction, because this is going to be helpful with understanding the difference of the typical standard thank you card that most of us have received and most of us have sent, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, there is a distinction of recognition and acknowledgement. Okay, recognition and acknowledgement. Recognition is saying thank you for what you did. Mm-hmm. Acknowledgement is saying thank you for who you are. And the difference of those, and I'll give you some, I'll spell that out a little bit better here, but there's a difference of saying, right? And Lisa, we had a great conversation about this, but when we were preparing for this event, which is we're talking about writing a note to some first-time home buyers, right? Yeah. And to, being able to say, hey, thank you so much for coming into my office, and we appreciate your business, and we're going to do a great job on your loan, right? Very good, simple, thanks for the thing you did. Thanks for giving us your business, right?
Vanilla.
The difference of acknowledgement is there's kind of like 3 components that go into it. I call this the ABCs of acknowledgement. So A stands for attitude, right? Attitude. Another way of saying attitude is like their being, how they showed up, right? like their attitude they brought to an experience, or how they show up to their work, or what they do. So attitude. B stands for behavior, which is what did they do? Like, I think there's a component to acknowledge, like, what did or does somebody do? And then the third piece is C, which is challenges. Okay, so attitude, behavior, and challenges. And when these three things are acknowledged, it is really interesting when you see the difference in how it shows up. So Lisa, I know you were talking about writing, the difference of writing some of those thank you cards to the first time home buyers. And it was this experience of like, hey, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the opportunity to take care of your first home. I know how scary this experience can be for you. And you have so many choices in where you can go. And you trusting us to take care of this means the world to us. And you know what? It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be some bumps in the road, but my job is to be on your side this entire time. So thank you for this opportunity to serve you guys. And we look forward to getting your first home funded, right? It was some variation of that, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that, like, notice the difference of that and, hey, thanks for giving us your business. Or, hey, thanks for going to coffee with me. Thanks for referring me to your brother. Thanks for and think about how your parents and family have taught you to, like, because here's the thing with thank you cards. For most people, it is obligatory.
Yes.
It is the thing you do after your wedding when you get all your presents and you've got to send everyone the thank you card. And you spend 7 months avoiding it because it is annoying. And you're lit because it's just thank you for the wine cork opener set, grandmother.
I love it. It's the best I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, it is like we want to avoid it like the plague, and so that's where gratitude has become. It almost becomes this like obligatory thing versus like, again, like, can I get in the emotion of true gratitude? Can I experience that what this person did as a gift of generosity? They didn't have to do it, right? And that's really where I think it needs to come from. So when I say the ABCs, so attitude, behavior, challenges, when you look back to the letter that I wrote to the pilots, right? It was this experience of like, hey, all the challenges that you go through to do what you do, right? It's not just, hey, thank you for getting us to the destination safely. It is, hey, there is so much more that goes into being a pilot than anybody sees. And in this moment, I see that. And I just want to say thank you for going through those challenges, for showing up on time and doing your job and doing it well. And because this is what you care about, because you're a caring human being. Now, I didn't necessarily say those exact words, but that was the emotion. That's what was felt. Mm-hmm. So that's when I say attitudes, behaviors, and challenges, because when you hit those three things, it's really interesting how, I know Lisa was talking about the responses you got from people who received some of your cards. And there's something to the effect when someone acknowledges how hard it is to be you. The challenges that go into not just doing your job, but everything else that you do in order to show up on time and do your job. When someone does that, which is extremely rare, that is acknowledgement, and that feels completely different. So when you're writing a thank you card, just keep those things in mind, right? The attitudes are like how they've shown up for you. The behavior is what have they done? And then the challenges is what do they go through to do what they do? And when you put those things in, we call it the whole human appraisal, right? Because you're really taking like a 360 view of what is it like to be this person, and you're acknowledging it, you're putting it in physical form, you send it. And that is the type of thank you card that somebody gets and they hang on to for years, because nobody does that. And I think, and this was like kind of an unexpected goal, but one thing that happened for me in this year was like my community transformed. Like, just people like treated my family differently. Like, they were kinder to my wife and our children because just how I showed up in the relationship. And there's just like this really just powerful aspect to it. So that would be like the formula that I would give to how to write a really impactful thank you card.
And I think the other thing too with the thank you cards, just because I've been working on this, just really thinking about the person. And one of the things I always think about is what keeps them up at night and what helps them win. So like, for a first-time buyer, like closing on time and getting that first house and giving them peace of mind, like that's how I think they would win. And what keeps them up at night? Are we going to have enough money? Are we really approved? So just even thinking about, walk in their shoes for a couple of minutes and then write those things. And I think it comes really naturally once you have that framework. And it gets easier. week
Yeah,
one, not
it does
starting.
take a little time. Yeah,
Yeah.
these will take a little bit more time, especially when you're getting used to them, but it is a muscle, right? It is something that you get better at acknowledging consistently the more you do it, for sure.
Yeah. And I think, you know, like week one, I'm sorry for those folks that got my cards week one because they were probably like, what the heck is she talking? And scribbles and whatnot. I don't rewrite the thank you cards. I just scribble it out. I feel like it feels more authentic. But you get, I think you just get better. Yeah, the muscle really does work. And I think you become better because I think one thing I've learned is being open and honest and telling people, not like, oh my gosh, you're wonderful, but you know, truly telling people what they've done for you or what they've meant to you or how they've shown up in your life. That's hard.
Mm.
That's a scary thing because you're opening yourself up to be rejected, or you're opening it up to say, hey, weirdo, why you write me that? But there was something in your book that I read that I thought was very funny, that nothing can really ever go bad by saying thank you. Like no one's punched you in the mouth. No one said, hey, creepy guy, don't come to our restaurant anymore.
Yeah.
Nothing like that, right?
No. Well, and the funny thing is, if you get a copy of the book, I know, you know, Lisa sent a few out, but like that there's a, the first card that I wrote to anybody was to a barista who, like day one. And it was, I went to a Starbucks cause at like 5:30 in the morning, cause I was like just super jacked up. I got this huge project starting and I sit down and I do my little miracle morning routine. And then I pull out the first thank you card and I'm like, okay, who am I going to appreciate today? And then I just look at this barista and she was, I mean, she was like jovial. She was happy. It was like 5:30 in the morning and she's like 18, 19. And I'm like, what 18, 19-year-old does that? And then, you know, she's like stacking boxes. And so I just literally sat there and like, and I wrote out the card and it was just like, you know, hey, I know it might seem strange to receive a thank you card from a patron, but I just wanted to say, I really appreciate you showing up early and just being a really positive person at 5:30 in the morning when most people who are showing up to you are not positive yet because they don't have their coffee. And on top of that, you know, thank you for like stacking the boxes and working hard and doing all the things that go into running this shop, because I spend thousands of dollars at Starbucks every single year because of people like you who show up and enjoy their work and do it really well. So I just want to say thank you for all the work that you do. And then my PS said, PS, I'm totally married with 2 children. So this is in no way anything other than a thank you card. Just thought you should know that. And so I put, you know, I did one of, she's like 19 and I'm like, you know, 35 at the time. And I was like, just wanted to set a little context. But so there was an experience of like, yeah, she didn't like, there's no, like, cause some people say like, hey, was this like, did you get any negative reaction? If there was, no one said anything. Right? Like, it's hard to be like pissed at the grateful person, right? You know, just, and the thing that was, by the way, one cool thing, this isn't in the book because it happened a year later, 2 years later, I wrote the book and then I went back to that Starbucks randomly. We had moved already and I was back in California. I went to that Starbucks. She was working that day. And I was like, no way. So I had to pull my book out and I opened the page to her card. I said, your card has been published in this book. And so there's a picture on my Instagram of us getting together. And I got to give her a copy of the book. And she's like, oh my gosh, I still have that card. Like that this is awesome. Like, so cool to meet you. So anyways, that was kind of a funny thing. But yeah, like nothing bad can happen from saying thank you. That's my overall experience.
So we have one other question in here and it says, any simple components to setting yourself up for maintaining this, i.e., what time of day do you typically write? How do you not run out of stamps?
I did not run a stamp. Well, they did. Okay, so just to clarify, they didn't need to necessarily be sent the same day. Sometimes I would make sure they're all written every single day, but I would usually like maybe one day or twice a week. I would stamp them and send them out. But I literally probably kept USPS in business in my city because I bought so many dang stamps. But yeah, so I mean, as far as like that, you know, I didn't have to send them every day. So that was one thing. The other piece is like, cause people do ask like, what was your like formula? Like, do you time block it? I did my best. I tried to do them early in the morning, but most of the time it happened at the end of the day because it became more of a reflective exercise of who did I meet today? What happened today? And so it was very much so in the moment. So for me, it worked out a lot at the end of the day. And so that's usually how I did it. I don't think that's necessarily a good or a bad thing. A lot of times I would do it in the moment. If it was a time where someone was there and I'm not going to get their address, like I'm not going to ask for the barista's address, right? Like I'm just going to say, here you go. And I'm going to hand it to her and I'm going to walk away. So so that's where it was like, I did most of it at night, but I tried to do as much of it during the day in the moment if I could. So that was like the overall structure I had on it.
Got it. I think that's all the questions that we had about that. And so yep, we got that. Okay. So I guess my question kind of as we wrap up here, and if anyone obviously has any questions, one of the things that I'm going to do for all the folks that are on this call is in support of John, I have bought some of his books. So I'm going to send the books to all of you so that you can read it, because the book has got actually lots of really cool stories and different things. And I just really think, who remembers the movie Pay It Forward? Anyone? Or is it just me? Am I dating myself? Thank you, John, for remembering the movie Pay It Forward. I think this has the same ripple effect as that movie. And I just think that we're all in business. We're all kind of type A people, and, or at least I think most of the people are. And I just feel that this is the thing that really takes your business to the next level without even trying. And I think that it makes you feel better. And I think the effect that you have on other people. So when I set out and started doing this, I said, if no one responds to me, it doesn't matter. We do a lot of gifting in my business. And John, I know your background is gifting. Like you're an official, you was like the King Cutco guy for many, many years. So for all of us that still give Cutco, I very much like it. I could use my knife sharpened, by the way, after Thanksgiving. But for someone who gives a lot of gifts to clients along the process and along the way with regards to certain milestones in the mortgage, after closing, et cetera, I used to always get like, why don't people say thank you? I think that's really rude. And then when I realized that, it was like, well, if I'm giving something to elicit a response, then it's all about me. It's not about them. And I think I read that in your book. So I was like, oh, so truly give with no expectation of response, receipt, thank you, is truly the gift.
Yeah. So a quick question for everybody, Lisa, because I know we talked about this right before the call, because you had a different answer than mine. So this is an interesting question, right? Because it became literally a chapter of my book, because it was really challenging for me to experience this. But out of 1,825 thank you cards, so just jot in the chat box, what % of people do you think responded that they got their card?
All right, so let's see.
10%.
Okay, so we've got, oh my gosh, I can't read that fast. 2%, 5%, 15%, 15%, 60. There are glass half full type folks.
Yes.
75. Yes. Whoa. 40, 47, 7, of course. John.
I love it. Okay, so the answer, as you guys keep jumping in there, was 10%. Mm-hmm. Which is interesting, because I mean, that's like 182 people that actually said thank you for the card that they got. That also means over 1,000 people said absolutely nothing. And that was really hard. And this was actually at month 2 in the project. I do a lot of blogging on Facebook. So if we're not friends on Facebook, you can find me at @Mr.Thank-You. I'll put my contact info up in a little bit. Yeah. And I shared this story of just like, I really, like 2 months into the project, same stat, 10% of people responded. By the way, that includes my family, my mom, dad, sisters, brothers. One sister out of my family responded that she got her thank you card. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And I was literally upset. And I had this moment, and this is what Lisa's talking about, where I had to ask myself, what is the intention? Mm-hmm. Is the intention to elicit a response, or is the intention to authentically express gratitude, right? That is the nature of a gift. It is something that is given freely without any attachment, without anything tied to it. And so I really had to let go and just say, hey, this is not for me. This is for other people. Mm-hmm. And the moment that happened, that was a huge shift for my year. And this goes for so many of us, right? Especially in business. You pay for someone's lunch, you do this little thing for somebody, you give here. And so when we give and keep score and track, and we make sure, and it just convolutes the relationship. So when we come in as a generous person and we give, it makes a big difference. So at least I think that's a great point for people to get, because you might start this project and you might have a similar reaction. So especially for those of you optimists who said 60, 70, 80%, I don't want you to have your hopes busted. Now, Lisa, your numbers were a little different. So what have yours been so far from the cards you've written?
So interesting, right? And I was just going to double check, because I think I've written out about 39 thank you cards. And right now I'm running at about 50%. but it could just be who I'm writing to. But I don't know. But I thought that was interesting that you were at 10. But so far, everyone that I've been writing to, I just kind of think in the day, like, I don't know who needs to hear.
People dislike Lisa Wells more than they like me. That's all that means.
Yeah, no. Well, if it helps you at all, I wrote one to my son and to my daughter, and I was 50-50 there because my son said thank you, and my daughter was like, thanks. I'm not quite sure what you're wanting from this, but thanks. 15, no expectations. So I thought that was, very fun to just know that that's the path I was on at this point. It may not always be the path, but I think for me, when I mentally shifted that it's not at all about me, it is truly trying to just make a difference in someone else's day and let it go at that. Doesn't matter what I give, doesn't matter if they respond. It's really just knowing that I did my part to brighten someone's day, honestly. That's it.
Awesome.
I think I've got one more question here, John, before we wrap up, and I definitely want to make sure that you share your stuff and anything else so that they know where to find you, they can follow you. I'll be giving everyone the book. Do you have an opinion about writing letter on stationery versus a funny card? What about holiday cards? Should you include a handwritten note on the card to differentiate from the other standard photo holiday cards? What do you think about that?
All right. Yeah, I think that in general, don't be too picky. If it's causing you to delay doing it, just work with whatever you have. I've written them on blank pieces of paper. I've written them on hotel stationery. I did particularly just go to Amazon and buy like a gigantic box of thank you cards, and I would just use those over and over. We did eventually start our own stationery company inside of our gifting company, so we do make those. We do have those available. I'll drop the links here in a moment. How to contact me if you want to get me that stuff. So we started making our own thank you cards. You can also get them personalized for yourself and put. I don't really recommend it to be like with your logo on the front. If you're getting them custom made, have like maybe your initials on the front. I think that's a very appropriate way to do it. And because you might send them personally, you might send them to business associates and whatnot. So that's my recommendation. I don't think that there's any wrong way. If you do greeting cards, it's an interesting thing. I think that's really your preference, right? So if you like to kind of find a very unique, specialized card with a message in it, that's fine. If it's specific to the holidays, I don't think I did too much of that. I kind of kept most of them pretty standard thank you cards, but I don't think there's a wrong way to do it as long as you're doing it.
Yeah, I just use my work thank you cards in the interim, and then I ordered just plain stationery with honestly just my initials at the very top in Boston, and that's it. So those
are pretty simple.
Stationery?
Yeah. Hey, I'll drop this in the comments. So I'm going to put my contact info on the bottom because I know we're going to wrap up here. So here's how to get a hold of me. I'll just put that in there. So my email is john@themrthankyou.com. Lisa, do you mind if I share just a little bit of what our vision is now with everything since my year is complete? Okay. So my project was, October 10th of 2016, and it went to October 9th of 2017. So my project technically is done. But inside of that, it was obviously this really transformative year that I just had this experience of like, man, the world needs to know about this. So, wrote a book about it, got to give a TED Talk on it. If you guys want to find just YouTube Mr. Thank You, you'll see the TED Talk pop up there. And our mission really evolved because a lot of people started hearing about this, and then they were like, wow, I want to do my own thank you project. And so our mission changed from just who we are at Mr. Thank You is about elevating the level of gratitude on the planet to who we are is about elevating the level of gratitude on the planet by 1% by inspiring 74 million thank you cards written around the world. And so you can actually go to, and I'll show you a quick screen share so you guys can all see this. This is MrThankYou.com. So we actually built this website to track all the gratitude that people who hear about this message, they want to start their own thank you project. So these are Mr. Thank You and Mrs. Thank Yous all around the world. So it shows like cards kind of going around. And this is what our mission is, because we've seen the impact this has on people's lives, on people's businesses. So if you go to MrThankYou.com, you can create a free account And then if you write a card to somebody, you can put their name and their zip code, and then we'll give you your own gratitude map. And it will track, number one, who you sent your cards to so you don't forget. And also it shows you where your cards are going around the world. So you can start to see your impact, and then it populates to our global map right here, which is great because we have people literally in Sweden, Canada, China, obviously all over the United States who have sent cards, and then they just track them on our website. So we just wanted to create a platform for people to start their own thank you projects, and to whatever capacity you want. And if there's anything that we can do to support you with that, obviously you guys are going to get a copy of the book. There's a 30-day challenge you can get at mrthankyou.com. So you might want to just copy and paste those little things. And I'll give that to Lisa. She can email that out.
Yeah, we can definitely follow up via email so that
Yeah.
you guys have all of that contact info.
Yeah, but now at this point, this is no longer about John Israel. This is really about just a give to the world. And it's a real blessing in my heart to just to be here with you guys today. Like, we've never met. Why would we ever meet except for Lisa Wells, who's like a heartfelt human being who kicks ass at work, and she loves people, and she wanted to give them something that really mattered to her. And I really hope this was of value to you guys, and you got something that's going to impact your life and your business. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Lisa, for hosting this event. My final challenge for you guys is to write that first card, right? After this call is over, take the time, grab that stationery, take some of the notes and ideas you've used, write that first card and send it today. Like, that's the first step. If you have to leave with one thing today, write the card, send it to whoever it is, and stay in touch. You can shoot me an email. I love to stay in touch with people on Facebook. Everything you can find me on Instagram and Facebook is at the Mr. Thank You. But again, I'll send that to Lisa. She can send it out to everybody in case you want to stay in touch. But that's it. Lisa, I'll let you kind of wrap us up here.
Yeah, thank you, John. This has been awesome. I really, truly hope that you guys feel like this was well worth the hour that you spent. When I listened to John the first time, probably 6 or 7 times this call, I got goosebumps. And I just feel that we work so hard, and this is the special stuff that we don't slow down enough to pay attention to. So I'm so glad that every one of you did that today and took a little bit of time away from your business to really look and work on it. And that's what this is. And not only on your business, but truly on yourself and how you show up as mom, a business partner, a business person, a realtor, or whatever. So thank you guys for all showing up. This is truly my best gift that I can give you guys, is to change your mindset towards other people and yourself too. Thank you, John. I will make sure that we send everything out. This will not be the last thing that you do for us, for sure, because it has been an absolute treat to get to know you and to hear your stories over and over. It's been massive for me. Awesome. All right, guys, we will sign off. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
John, hang on one second. I'm gonna stop this.